They're keeping the lake level right about normal summer pool, which is right at 917. Seemed like they shut the water off just before our fishing report last week. Hadn't been very much generation, but the water temperature is anywhere from the mid 70s to the higher 80s. Fishing's been really good. Just a little bit of everything that's going on. A lot of the fish are starting to move out a little deeper. There's still been a real good topwater bite, certain ends of the lake. Bottom bite's getting a lot better, still catching a lot of fish on a Ned rig. Football jigs are working. Carolina rigs, like I said, a lot of bottom baits starting to work. I'm catching fish on crankbait up in the river arms. Just quite a variety of stuff going on. I think the drop shot bite, I hadn't been doing it very much, but it's going to be something. The fish are moving out. They're already out in that depth right now, but that's something that's going to pick up and get better and better as the water gets warmer. But as far as on the top water, depends on the day and where you're at. Without a doubt, it's better when it's cloudier and got a little bit of wind. But my better topwater bite's probably been on the lower end of the lake, more down towards Indian Point, State Park, in that area. I am catching a few, random topwater fish other areas of the lake, but the most consistent in the number has been down on that lower end of the lake. And it depends what the water conditions are as far as the wind and the clouds, what baits I'm throwing, but catching a lot of fish on wake baits. Like this is a Strike King wake shad, and it's a lot similar to like a jointed redfin or storm thunderstick. Pretty much just stays on the top, and it's got a real wide wobble. Walking baits are working good, like a cigar type lure. This is a Strike King Sexy Dog, real similar to like a Zara Spook. Walking baits are working good. Seems like if you got a little bit of chop on the water, Pop-R or Splash It, or like a Rico or Yellow Magic Popper's working. And I'm really mixing up the colors, but it seems like sexy shad colors, whites and bones are working real good for me on the topwater. Some of these fish are out. There's still a little bit of a shad spawn going on, so if you're around some deeper docks early in the morning, you can catch some fish. Some of them are out on main lake bluff end points, and a lot of the topwater fish as well been on gravel flats. There's been a good smallmouth topwater bite if you're around the gravel flats. If you're out on the bluff ends, you're apt to catch any one of the three species. And like I say, there's still a little bit of a shad spawn going on. And basically what them shad are doing is they're laying their eggs on the styrofoam of the dock. If there's timber in the water, like pole timber, they'll be putting their eggs there. I was up in the river the other day, and there was kind of wads of debris floating around, and the shad were actually spawning around that floating debris as well. I think we're at the tail end of the shad spawn, the bigger part of it, but it is still going on in the morning. And like I said, on them gravel flats, a lot of times if I'm not seeing any fish up on top, after the first hour or two, a bait that's been working good, and I hadn't talked much about this bait. No certain reason, I hadn't been trying to hide it or anything, but we've been throwing this bait for about a month and a half, and it's a Dual Realis makes it. It's a Spybait, and it looks like kind of like an old devil's horse. It's got a prop on each end. It's got real small hooks on it, and I played with changing the hooks, but you want to stay with the hooks that comes with the bait because it'll impair the action of the bait. But basically we're fishing this just like a swim bait. We'll cast it out, count to about 6 or 8, and reel it back in real slow. Now I like to throw it on a spinning rod, and I don't like to use much heavier than 6 or 8 pound line. You can throw it on a bait caster, but I just like the feel of it a little better on a spinning rod. But we'll fish this the same place that we would be fishing a 4-inch grub or a little underspin. And it actually works great out there on them gravel flats where you set the boat in about 20, 25 feet of water. Excuse me. Now, there's still a lot of fish, and they're mainly smallmouths. If you're on them gravel flats, like saying 20 to 25 feet, seem to bite real good in the morning, and it gets a little bit harder as the sun gets up higher. And if I can't catch them on the topwater or the little spy bait, then I'll go down to the bottom. And there's been a good jig bite. Now the smallmouths, I've been, keeping that boat in that 20 to 25 feet of water, and I've been catching them on a 9/16, 5 fish lures, ultimate finesse jig, and I've been using either a Zoom speed craw or like a chompers or any kind of twin tail trailer seems to work. I've had real good luck with the Ultra Vibe speed craw. And pretty much just dragging this bait on the bottom. You want to pay close attention. A lot of times, especially early, whenever your jig hits the water, click the bail in, keep your line taut, because you will catch some suspended fish before the bait gets to the bottom. So if you see your line jump or hop. And same thing with the Ned rig, fishing it in the exact same depth. Then once that sun gets up, it seems like if you got to back out a little bit deeper, if you get the boat about 30 foot, then you're apt to start catching the Kentuckies on the bottom on the jig. And like I was saying earlier, there is a Carolina rig bite you can throw, like a baby brush hog or a French fry, centipede, lizard, in the same areas that you're trying to throw a jig or a Ned rig as well. I like to throw this big, it's a 1/2 ounce and 5/8 ounce. We call it a shaky worm head. It's basically just a football head. And I use a Magnum Zoom, either a finesse worm, which is the shorter one, or the Magnum Zoom trick worm. And especially if I'm around some of the conservation brush piles, you want to work that jig and these worms, through that brush real slow and steady. There's been a lot of good fish in the brush piles. It just seems like you got to move around quite a little bit. I've been catching some fish on a Strike King 5XD and a 6XD up in the river arms. Now that bite hasn't been real consistent for me, but when I do get a bite on it, it's a good quality fish. And a lot of fish on swim baits. And the swim baits you can kind of throw throughout the day. The swim bait's a good bait to throw. Like if you're in an area, you're catching some topwater fish, you can either try the spy bait afterwards or a swim bait. But I've been throwing the swim bait on 5/16 or about from a 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce head, depending on what size bait I'm throwing and how deep I want it to go. But I'm throwing like a 3.8 up to a 4.8, Rage Swimmer, Kitech. Paddle tail swim baits seem to be working a little bit better for me. I'm just dropping this bait down to whatever depth I see the fish on my Panoptic or the bait, and just slow rolling it like a spinnerbait. But like I say, it's been working, throughout the day. This past weekend, I was a boat captain in the high school tournament, the National Youth Championship this past weekend. And my boys caught fish all day long on either the jig or the swim bait. The better quality fish pretty much came on the swim bait. But you just had to stay with it, work the bait real slow. It's kind of one of the deals you either want to get out there and fish the bottom or try for some of the suspended fish. And you'll see a lot of bait in that 10 to 12 to 15 foot, no matter what end of the lake you go to. And if you're watching any of this MLF, you'll see a lot of them guys, they're catching them on grubs, finesse baits, and even casting to them on a drop shot. And they're just fishing around where that bait is. The fish are, suspended underneath them and around them. Or you can concentrate on some of the deeper ones and, go down on the bottom where a lot of the fish are feeding on crawdads. But on the jig, it seems like the green pumpkin orange or PBJ colors have been working the best for me, and it doesn't really matter which end of the lake, I've been fishing. I haven't caught too many on a flutter spoon. I hadn't been throwing it that much, but with the fish and bait being suspended up in that water column, that's another bait that should work well too. The spoon bite on the dock, I haven't really, I think as that water gets a little warmer, excuse me, some of them fish will start getting, grouped up underneath them docks. In the morning, there's been, like I said, some fish around the docks during the shad spawn. But I haven't had a very good dock bite as far as anything that's consistent as far as flipping the spoon in like we normally do this time of year. So it looks like, we had the busy weekend, but the fishing's really good. With the water current slowing down, I look for them fish to start getting grouped up a little bit deeper. When they were generating a lot of water, the oxygen level was good. There's really no reason for a lot of them fish to go real deep. But now that the water temperature's getting warmer and there's very little generation, I think you're going to see a lot of the fish starting to group up in that 25 to 30 feet, on drop shot rigs, and a lot more finesse fishing out there. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.